When you hang around certain people, it will not be long. You will catch the disease they carry. It is not your fault what people did to you. But it is your fault what you let what they did to you do to you. It is not your fault what you went through, but it is your fault what you allow it to do to you. It's not my fault how my parents went about giving birth to me, but it is my responsibility to take charge with God and know which direction I'm going to go in my life. Usually, bitterness begins with offense. Somebody has to offend you. Once more, just like temptation, you cannot live in this world and never be offended. I want us to open our Bibles to the book of Hebrews chapter 12. I want to start speaking on a series, but I want us to read a scripture, and if you have whatever translation that you have, open with me to the book of Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14 to 15. Look for yours. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 14 to 15. And it says in the old King James Version, "Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled." The last statement or the last phrase that is in this passage, it says, "Lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled." Today I want to start on a series that I call Uprooting the Bitter Tree. Uprooting the bitter tree. Uprooting the bitter tree. You don't need to have degrees in agriculture to know that no tree grows and produces without root, except in Exodus that the rod of Aaron will bud. But there's no record that the rod of Aaron, after budding, it produced fruit. It just brought out the leaves to demonstrate the miraculous power of God attached to it. But you and I know that no tree produces fruit without a root. The job of the root of every tree, I can give you three. Number one is to stabilize the tree and anchor it to the ground so that it stops it from falling. If the tree has no root or the tree's roots are endangered, the slightest wind will bring it down. So the root anchors it to the ground and prevents it from falling. Number two, the roots absorb nutrients from the ground, from the soil. It takes water and minerals and nutrients from the soil and feeds it to the tree. That is what the roots will do for the tree. Number three, the roots also stores food. That is why sometimes even during Hamatan, all the leaves will fall. The tree is standing with all the leaves gone. But because the root is still storing some food, the first rain that will fall, you see it's, reproducing again. So roots are very, very vital for the survival and the continuous existence of any tree. Without the root, the tree will die. Therefore, when you cut the root of a tree, you are killing it. If you cut the root of the tree, you are killing it. And so we are going to drive on this road or be on this direction of this course, and the objective is to cut down some trees. But to cut the trees down, we are going to attack the root. Turn to somebody and tell the person it's time to cut down some trees. And I know some of you are going to jump on the wagon and go to your family house and begin to cut down the udara tree and say, Pastor said we should cut down some trees, and that's the tree that is my problem. But no, we are not talking about the mango tree in a compound. We are not talking about the uruku tree or iruku tree that is standing there. There are some trees that are not physically seen, but they are growing in your life that need to be cut down. The tree we are going to cut down is the tree of bitterness. We want to identify this root and cut it down. You see, nobody generally admits he or she is bitter. When you talk to somebody and say, look, you are in bitterness. No, I'm not bitter. No, you are living in offense. No, I'm not offended. I'm not. Anybody that admits that he or she is bitter is more than halfway to recovery. Because most people never admit that they are bitter. When they exert their vengeful and hyperventilate, they explain the reason they are doing it. They don't tell you that they are bitter. But bitterness can be a major cancer in somebody's life, that will eat your flesh up. The danger of bitterness is that it's more deadly than coronavirus. It is both deadly and infectious. When you get around somebody who is bitter, it will not be long. You will have a bitter taste. If you don't have a bitter taste from the person, you will begin to generate bitterness in your heart towards the person for whom the person you are with is bitter against. Bitterness is both infectious and contagious. When you hang around certain people, it will not be long. You will catch the disease they carry. And spiritually, when you hang around a bitter person, you will become bitter. Why? Because bitterness is highly contagious, it is infectious, it is highly communicable. It's a communicable disease. Let me say this to you. It is not your fault what people did to you. But it is your fault what you let what they did to you do to you. It is not your fault that you were insulted, but it is your fault what you do with the insult in your life. It is not your fault what you went through, but it is your fault what you allow it to do to you. It is not your fault what people said to you, but it is your responsibility to deal with it in your own life, because the person who said it to you has only said it to you, and it's on you. Even if that person dies, it's you that is going to bear the consequences of it. And what they did may not be fair. What someone said to you may not be fair. How you were treated may not be fair. But how you treat yourself is more important than whatever anybody did to you. No, we live in the world that we are forever giving excuses. My life is like this because when I was a child, somebody did this to me. My life is like this because when I was young, somebody did this to me. But listen to me, it doesn't matter what the person who did to you, experiences later. It is your business what you do to yourself to come out of that. We live in the world that is full of excuses and reasons. We want to encourage you to dwell on your past. We always want to pass the blame on your ancestors. It's not my fault how my parents went about giving birth to me, but it is my responsibility to take charge with God and know which direction I'm going to go in my life. Therefore, whatever anybody did to you may not be fair. The pastor, you don't even know what this person did. You don't know that person treated me. He treated me so badly, and you cry. Yes, the treatment was bad, but it has left that person. It's now your responsibility to get rid of it, or else it will kill you while that person is still alive. Let me say this to you. What bitterness will do if it is allowed in your life. Number one, if you don't kill the root of bitterness, it will destroy you. If you don't kill the root of bitterness, it doesn't matter what happens to the person who caused it. It will destroy you. Well, make sure that he goes to jail. Going to jail, that person going to jail will not change anything in your life. If the root is not cut off, it will destroy you even after the person has gone to jail. Number two, if you don't cut the root of bitterness in your own life, it can turn the wronged into wrong. Let me explain that. If you don't deal with the root of bitterness in your life, it can turn you, the wronged person, to become a wrongdoer. The hurt will be hurting. The wounded will be wounding. The offended will be offending. The insulted will be insulting. The killed will be killing. Are you getting what I'm saying? The injured will be injuring. The abused will be abusing. If you don't kill the bitterness in you, even after you have been wrong, no longer will you be a wronged person, but you will now become the wronger. You will be wronging people. And number three, if bitterness is not destroyed, bitterness, as I said, is more contagious than any disease you can think about. You will spread it everywhere you go, and other people will catch it from you. And in fact, the people who will catch it from you will go and fight people who have not offended them. And having said that, I want to look at what we may call a case study. And we are going to look at an interesting drama in the Bible involving 5 major people. An interesting, drama in the Bible. In fact, it involves the whole of Israel. But in every movie, they have the main actors, they have the supporting actors. So we have 5 major and supportive actors in this movie that we are going to watch. And I will soon introduce the theater where the movie will be screened. But let me introduce you to the major characters who will play the major roles and the supportive role. One of the characters is called David. Another character is called Absalom. Another character is called Amnon. Another character is called Ahithophel. And another character is called Hushai. David was the king. Amnon and Absalom were the sons of the king, so we can call them the princes. Ahithophel was David's trusted counselor. He was his counselor. He was his chief advisor, chief of staff. He was the person that David relied on before he would take any step. And then the 5th character is called Hushai. Hushai was David's friend. And a friend can be in the kitchen cabinet. You don't have to have a political position to come close to the person that is in office. So these 5 characters form the major players in this movie that we are going to watch. And I want you to know that the theater or the movie house where you will see this movie will be in 2 Samuel chapter 13 all the way to 2 Samuel chapter 23. It's an epic movie with political intrigues, betrayals, mistrust, all kinds of schemes. But it comes down to 4 major words. 1, temptation. 2, bitterness. 3, revenge. And 4, rebellion. That is how this movie's major ingredients and components are. Now, let me start with the temptation part. Listen, temptation comes on all. There is nobody that will not face temptation. Everyone gets tempted. If you think you are holier than Jesus Christ, congratulations. But the Bible tells us in Matthew chapter 4, he was tempted. And in the book of Hebrews, we are told he was tempted in all points as we are, yet without sin. So temptation comes to all, but your responses to temptation is what matters. It's not about the temptation, but your responses. Because if you don't respond well to temptation, it will lead to crisis. And when it gets into that crisis, it will always offend not only God, it will offend somebody. When you are tempted and you don't address the temptation well, it will lead to problems that will offend God, and you will end up offending someone. And the second word in that movie is bitterness. Somebody will always offend somebody. And offenses come through 3 basic ways. Number 1, it can come intentional. Somebody say intentional. Intentional. Some people will go out of their way to intentionally make you mad. They will, in fact, they will make you uncomfortable because they want to get rid of you. So they will do everything possible to make you lose interest in what you are doing, lose your steam, and in fact, you will be so offended at what you were so enthusiastic about, you will lose your enthusiasm in that thing. You will start with your fire. Some people will go out of their way to quench your fire. So offenses will come, and Jesus said there is always going to be offenses. But offenses will come, number 1, intentional offenses. Number 2, there is what we call accidental offenses. Offenses that were not meant to be offensive, but it's offended you all the same. Offenses will come as a result of unmet expectation. It's also part of the unintentional offenses. Unmet expectations. You look at me the way I am dressed, and you just believe that you can ask me for a certain amount of money, or when I come to you and you tell me your problem, all I will do is to put my hands in my pocket and give you the money. And I didn't do that. You had an expectation that I was going to do that, but I didn't do it. It can lead to offense. It can make you become offended. I was listening to somebody who just said, and that is often common. It's very, very common. You hear that, especially in this part of the world. That my brother, he has the money, but he has refused to help me. Are you his, account officer in the bank? That my uncle, he can do it. Listen, 4 of his children are abroad. I'm not asking to go abroad. I say, give me some money. And because he didn't give you, you can be offended in that person. It's an unmet expectation. When Naaman was leaving the house of Elisha, he was hungry. The Bible said that when he came there, Elisha said, go and wash in River Jordan. He said, Fiakwa. Have you forgotten River Abana? Big, beautiful rivers, and he was angry, he was going. Unmet expectation can make you become offended. And like I said, bitterness starts with offense. Something is said, something is done, something is not done, something is not said that can bring an offense in you. And once it begins to grow, there's something the tree of offense need to survive on, and that is the root of bitterness. And let me read the scripture that we read before I'll continue. Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 14 and 15. The New King James Version says, "Pursue peace with all people and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. Looking carefully, lest anyone fall short of the grace of God. Lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by this many become defiled." Everybody get offended at certain points, and anything can offend you, and everybody can be exposed to offense. In Matthew chapter 16, verse 23, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, Matthew chapter 16, verse 23, Jesus, the Son of God, impeccable Son of God, looked at one of his disciples, in fact, the leading disciple that eventually became the head of the bunch. He looked at him and said, "You are an offense unto me." Peter didn't mean it, but what he said offended Jesus Christ. And Jesus admitted that Peter had offended him. In Matthew chapter 16, verse 23, it said, "But he turned and said unto Peter, Get thee behind me, Satan. Thou art an offense unto me, for thou savest not." You are an offense to me. So you are not the first to be offended. In Matthew chapter 18, verse 7, Jesus said, "Woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must need be that offenses come. But woe to that man by whom the offense cometh." Yes, offense come to all, but when it comes to you, you must deal with it. You must deal with it. And I will say something that will even upset somebody or offend somebody. And if it offends you, it's intentional. They're joking. It's not intentional, but it's needful. It is not the business of the person who offended you that you get healed. It is not the responsibility of the person who offended you that you get healed. It is your responsibility to get healed because you need your health. You understand what I'm saying? Even if the person did it intentionally or unintentionally or imaginary, it is your responsibility to live well. You look at me and say, because you offended me, I'll be sick for you. I will be sick. So you will say, I will be sick. You want to be sick? Okay. No, if you tell me that I will be sick, then you are hurting me. But if you decide to be sick because of what I did, I may feel sorry for you, but I can't help it. So this may sound a little bit deep or so harsh to somebody. It is not the business or the responsibility of the person who offended you that you get well. It is your responsibility to get well. I'm taking my time to be making such this before we get even deeper into the movie house. Because offense comes to all, but when it comes, you must deal with it or it will turn you into a bitter person. That offense will turn to bitterness. You will now have a lake called Mara. It will maralize you. It will turn you from Naomi to Mara. As sweet as you are, it can mess up your own destiny with your help. And sometimes instead of you to resist the devil, you resist yourself. Instead of you to fight the enemy, you fight yourself. And when offense is not dealt with, it makes the offended become offender. The wounded will become the wounder. And not only wounder of other people, but you become self-wounder too. He wounds himself. Like I said, offense is always contagious. And it's more contagious than Ebola and coronavirus combined. And when you walk with an offense, when you walk with offense in your heart, it is not long. You will raise an army of offended people. And as we go into this account, you will see it. Some of the symptoms or the people that we see some symptoms of the offense with you and sympathize with you will eventually catch the same symptoms too. When offended people go around, most times they seek people who are also offended to associate with. Instead of seeking healing, they will look for people who are also offended to associate with. And when you are offended and you allow the offense to stay, you open the door for demon spirit into your life. The person who offended you might have repented before God, but you open the door, or you can shut the door of demon spirit in your own life.